Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
The air here always felt thick, like breathing through a wet blanket. Not just the dust, though there was plenty of that too, but something else. Something heavy with the smell of metal and fear. My name is Kael, or at least, that's what I remember being called before this place. Now I'm just Unit 734. We all have numbers, it's easier for them, I guess. The Overlords, they were everywhere, these giants. Imagine standing next to a mountain, but the mountain moves, and it has 4 arms, each one thick as a tree trunk. Their skin was a deep mottled gray, like old granite, and their eyes, if you could call them that, were glowing slits of orange light. No mouths, just a series of shifting plates on their faces that clicked and whirred when they communicated. That's where the implant came in. A sharp, cold jab behind the ear, a buzzing in your skull. And suddenly, their alien clicks and whirs made sense. It wasn't a language you spoke with your tongue, but with your mind. A direct feed. Unit 734, move faster. The thought voice wasn't loud, but it vibrated through my bones, a command that bypassed ears and went straight to the brain. My muscles screamed, but I pushed the heavy cart forward. It was filled with nutrient paste, a gray, slimy substance that kept us alive, barely. We were lucky. We were slaves. The alternative, that was the real horror. They called it the processing cycle. Every 10 cycles a slave was deemed inefficient or worn. Then they went to the processing. We didn't see it, but we heard the screams, sometimes faint and chilling, carried on the strange high-pitched winds that swept across this barren world. 10 years. That was our expiration date. A decade of hauling, building, serving, and then you became food for them, or for the other creatures they kept. We never knew for sure. The farm was a vast sprawling complex of metal and reinforced rock. Our living quarters were cramped, stacked pods, each just big enough for one to curl up in. No windows, just a single dim light that flickered constantly. The air filtration system hummed a monotonous drone that was the only constant sound besides the thought voices of the Overlords. Outside, the sky was a perpetual twilight. 2 moons, one green and one purple, casting long, eerie shadows. The ground was hard, cracked earth, and strange, thorny plants grew in patches, their leaves a sickly yellow. Nothing familiar, nothing comforting. Kael, you heard about the new arrivals? It was Alara, her thought voice a whisper in the shared mental space. She was from my original transport, one of the few still left after 3 cycles. Her face was gaunt, eyes sunken, but there was a spark of defiance still in them. She was a fighter even here. New arrivals? From where? I pushed harder on the cart, trying to look busy. The Overlords had monitors everywhere, little floating spheres that watched our every move. They brought in a fresh batch of glorgs this morning, she replied, her thought voice tinged with disgust. The glorgs were a reptilian species, squat and green with 3 eyes. They were kept in separate pens, their purpose unclear, but their terrified chirps often echoed through the complex. They were definitely not slaves. They were just livestock. More mouths to feed, more bodies to process, I thought back. The bitterness a cold knot in my stomach. No, not glorgs, something else, something different. Clara paused, her thought voice dropping even lower, almost a tremor. I saw them, through the observation window in Sector Gamma. They look like us. My heart, or whatever passed for it now, lurched. Like us? What do you mean, like us? Tall, 2 arms, 2 legs. Not like the glorgs, not like the 4-legged creatures they use for heavy lifting. They were familiar. She didn't elaborate, but the implication hung heavy in the air between us. If they looked like us, did that mean they were from home? But home was gone, destroyed. We were the last, or so we thought. Suddenly, a piercing siren blared, not through the implant, but through external speakers. A raw, grating sound that made everyone freeze. The floating surveillance spheres zipped closer, their orange glow intensifying. An Overlord, larger than the others, its granite-like skin darker, its 4 arms held stiffly at its sides, materialized from around a corner. Its thought voice boomed, overriding all other thoughts, a command that sent a wave of icy dread through every slave. Attention all units, a breach has occurred in Sector Delta. All non-essential personnel are to report to holding pens immediately. Failure to comply will result in immediate processing. Sector Delta, that was where the new arrivals were kept. And a breach? What could have breached this place? And if they were like us, what did that mean for them, and for us? The thought voice of the lead Overlord, cold and unwavering, added a chilling postscript. The new food supply is agitated. The siren shriek tore through the air, scratching at my skull even through the implant. It wasn't just a sound, it felt like a physical blow. Every slave around me froze, carts abandoned, tools clattering to the hard ground. The floating surveillance spheres, usually just a dull orange, pulsed a frantic red, zipping around like angry insects. The Overlord thought voice, the one that had just announced the breach, was still echoing in my mind. The new food supply is agitated. Agitated. That was a strange word for something about to be processed. Go, move. A smaller overlord, its gray skin lighter, its movements quicker, swept into our work area. Its forearms gestured wildly, pushing us towards the designated holding pens. We didn't need to be told twice. The thought of immediate processing was enough to get anyone moving. The pens were just temporary cages, places they herded us when they needed to do maintenance, or when they were culling. The path to the pens was a narrow corridor, lit by flickering overhead lights. The air grew colder here, a damp chill that seeped into your bones. The usual drone of the air filtration system was now mixed with distant muffled thuds and a strange high-pitched wailing that wasn't from any Glorg I'd ever heard. It was too human. Kael, stay close, Alara thought, her voice tight with fear. She was right beside me, her hand brushing against mine for a brief comforting moment. We shuffled along with the other slaves, a silent, terrified herd. The overlords watched us with their glowing orange slits, their thought voices a constant low hum of commands and observations. They didn't seem panicked, not really. More like annoyed, like a farmer dealing with unruly livestock. As we neared the pens, the sounds from Sector Delta grew louder. A metallic screech, then a heavy clang, like something massive hitting a wall. The wailing intensified, rising and falling, a chorus of despair and rage. It wasn't just fear, there was anger in those sounds. They're fighting back, Alara whispered, her thought voice barely audible above the internal chatter of the overlords. Against what? I thought back, my mind racing. No one fought the overlords. It was suicide. They had their energy weapons, their sheer size, their numbers. We had nothing. We were pushed into holding pen 7. It was a large open space ringed by thick, transparent walls. Through the walls I could see other pens filled with other groups of slaves, all shuttled together, looking out, and beyond them, through a series of interconnected corridors, I saw it. Sector Delta. It was chaos, not the quiet, controlled chaos of a processing cycle, but something wild. Figures, two-armed and two-legged, were scrambling, running, some throwing themselves against the transparent barriers that held them. They were indeed like us, same general shape, same way of moving, but their skin was a pale, almost sickly white, and their hair was a dark, matted mess. Their clothes, what was left of them, were tattered rags. They looked starved and desperate. An overlord, one of the smaller ones, was trying to contain them, its forearms moving with surprising speed, firing bursts of orange energy from its fingertips. Each burst sent a figure sprawling, leaving a smoking scorch mark on the floor. But for every one that fell, 2 more seemed to rise, clawing at the walls, their wails now turning into guttural roars. They're human, Alara thought, her voice filled with a strange mix of horror and wonder. They're really human, from Earth, my mind reeled. Earth, that was a myth, a distant memory, a place we were told was long gone. We, the original slaves, were from a colony world, captured centuries ago. We had never seen true humans. We were just descendants, or so we were told. But if these were humans, then what were we? A chill that had nothing to do with the cold air ran down my spine. A heavy thud echoed through the complex. The lights flickered, then dimmed. The overlord fighting the humans paused, its head tilting, its thought voice broadcasting a single urgent command. Containment breach in Sector Epsilon. All units redirect Sector Epsilon. That was the main power conduit. If that went down, the whole farm would be in darkness. And if the power failed, what about the barriers? What about the implants? The overlord that had been containing the humans zipped away, its orange eyes glowing even brighter as it sped towards Sector Epsilon. The remaining humans in Sector Delta, seeing their chance, redoubled their efforts. One of them, a broad-shouldered man, found a weak point in the transparent wall, a hairline crack barely visible. He started slamming his shoulder into it, again and again with a desperate rhythmic force. They're going to break through, Alara thought, her voice a mix of dread and something else. Excitement. What do we do, Kael? The shattering sound of the transparent wall was like a crack of thunder in the dim, cold corridor. The humans, a desperate wave of pale skin and ragged clothes, surged through the opening. Their eyes, wide and wild, darted around, taking in our pens, our frightened faces. For a moment there was a strange silence, just the distant wails and the hum of failing systems. Then the woman who had met my gaze earlier, the one with the dark, furious eyes, pointed at us. They're like us, her voice, though muffled by the remaining barriers, was raw, filled with a mix of disbelief and hope. She gestured wildly, trying to communicate. Are you from Earth? My mind raced. Earth, that word again. Alara squeezed my arm, her thought voice urgent. Kael, they don't know. They think we're like them. Before I could respond, the broad-shouldered man who had broken the wall, his face streaked with grime and blood, yelled something else. Help us, the giants are coming back. As if on cue, the distant thudding grew louder, closer. The lights flickered again, plunging us into near darkness for a terrifying second before sputtering back to a weaker glow. The overlords were redirecting, just as their thought voice had said. They were coming for the humans, and now for us too. We have to get out, Alara thought, her voice firm. Now while they're distracted, stand back, I thought, projecting my voice as clearly as I could through the implant, hoping they'd understand. My own hands were trembling. This was it. This was the moment. Either we stayed and waited for processing, or we took a chance. With a final groaning tear, the barrier to our pen buckled and then shattered, sending shards of transparent material skittering across the floor. The humans poured in, their faces a mixture of relief and urgency. We need to get to the main conduit, the woman with the dark eyes thought, her voice now clear and direct in my mind. Her implant too must have been activated. That's where the power is. If we can disable it completely, it might buy us time. And maybe even disable these things. She tapped her temple, indicating the implant. Disable the implants, Alara thought, a flicker of something akin to joy in her voice. The implants were our chains. Without them we wouldn't understand the Overlords. We wouldn't be controlled. Yes, the woman confirmed. We believe the implants are linked to the main power grid. A full shutdown might disrupt them. My name is Anya. This is Jax, she gestured to the broad-shouldered man. We're from the last transport, Kael. This is Alara, I replied, a strange feeling bubbling up inside me. These were humans, real humans, and they had a plan, a desperate, impossible plan, but a plan nonetheless. There's a service tunnel near Sector Epsilon, I thought, remembering the endless layouts of the farm etched into my memory from years of hauling. It leads to the lower levels. It's rarely monitored. Show us, Anya thought, her eyes narrowed, assessing me. There was a suspicion there, a question in her gaze. Why did we, the slaves, know this place so well? We moved, a strange mix of gaunt slaves and wild-eyed humans through the dimly lit corridors. The sounds of the Overlords were getting closer, their thought voices now a chorus of angry commands. Containment failure. Re-engage Sector Delta. Locate and neutralize escapees. As we hurried, a thought struck me, cold and sharp. Anya had said they were from the last transport, and we, the slaves, were from a colony world, captured centuries ago. If they were the last, and we were the descendants, what did that make us? Were we just another species they had harvested, or something else entirely? The question gnawed at me, but there was no time for answers. We reached the service tunnel. It was dark, narrow, and smelled of ozone and damp rock. Just as we were about to enter, a piercing shriek echoed from behind us. An Overlord, larger than any I'd seen, its granite skin almost black, rounded the corner. Its forearms were extended, glowing with a menacing orange light. It was the one that had announced the breach. The lead Overlord. Units, halt, its thought voice boomed, shaking the very foundations of the tunnel. Compliance is your only option. Return to your designated pens. Failure to comply will result in immediate termination. Jax, without a word, shoved Anya and me into the tunnel. Go, I'll hold it, he roared, turning to face the giant. He had no weapon, just his bare hands and a desperate courage I hadn't seen in years. No, Jax, Anya screamed, but he was already moving, a blur of motion, throwing himself at the Overlord. It was a futile gesture, a sacrifice, but it bought us precious seconds. We scrambled down the dark tunnel, Alara pulling me along. The sounds of combat behind us were sickening. The heavy thuds of the Overlord arms, Jax's guttural cries, then a sickening crack. My stomach churned. He was gone. The tunnel opened into a vast cavernous space, dimly lit by emergency lights. Massive conduits, thick as ancient trees, snaked across the ceiling and walls, humming with raw energy. This was the heart of the farm. And in the center of it all, a glowing, pulsating orb crackling with arcs of electricity, the main power core. That's it, Anya thought, her voice strained. We have to overload it, it's the only way. But as we approached the core, a new sound filled the cavern. Not the thudding of Overlords, but a high-pitched, rhythmic clicking. And from the shadows, dozens of eyes, glowing green, emerged. They were smaller than the Overlords, but faster, more agile. They had too many legs, too many joints, and razor-sharp claws. And they were swarming towards us, their clicking growing louder, a hungry, chittering chorus. These weren't the Glorgs. These were the things that sometimes got the processed slaves. The other creatures, and they were very, very hungry. The clicking grew louder, a hungry, chittering sound that filled the vast cavern. Dozens of glowing green eyes emerged from the shadows, attached to bodies that were all legs and claws, scuttling across the floor and even up the massive conduits. These were the other creatures, the ones we whispered about, the ones who consumed what the Overlords processed. They were fast, their movements jerky and unpredictable. Run, get to the core, Anya screamed, her thought voice sharp with terror. She grabbed a loose piece of metal pipe from the floor, a desperate weapon against the incoming swarm. Alara, her face pale, pulled a smaller, sharper piece of debris from a broken console. I found a heavy wrench, my hands slick with sweat. The creatures were on us in seconds, a wave of snapping jaws and raking claws. Their skin was tough like dried leather, and they smelled of something rotten and metallic. I swung the wrench, connecting with a sickening crunch against one creature's segmented body. It shrieked, a high-pitched sound that made my teeth ache, and fell back, its many legs twitching. "There's too many," Alara yelled, parrying a lunge from another creature, its claws tearing a strip from her sleeve. Anya was fighting like a cornered animal, her pipe a blur, but the creatures were relentless. They swarmed, their green eyes fixed on us with an unsettling hunger. We were food, just like the glorgs, just like the processed slaves. The emergency lights flickered again, casting long dancing shadows that made the creatures seem even more monstrous. The main power core pulsed, its arcs of electricity illuminating the cavern in flashes of blinding light. It was so close, yet so far. Then a new sound, a deep, resonant thudding, echoed from the tunnel we had just exited. The Overlords. They had found us. Two of them, the lead Overlord, the one with the black skin, and another, smaller one, emerged from the darkness. Their orange eyes glowed, fixing on us, then on the creatures. Containment failure. Primary food source compromised, the lead Overlord thought voice boomed, overriding the chittering of the creatures and the frantic thoughts of Anya and Alara. It wasn't angry, not truly. It was just stating a fact. A problem to be solved. The creatures, sensing the Overlord's presence, hesitated for a moment, their clicking softening into a low growl. They knew their place in the hierarchy, but their hunger was stronger. They continued to press in on us, a living wall of teeth and claws. "They're not stopping," Anya cried, a creature latching onto her leg. She screamed, falling to one knee, her pipe clattering away. "Alara, the core, now!" I yelled, pushing her towards the pulsating orb. I swung the wrench wildly, trying to keep the creatures off Anya, but they were too many. One of them lunged at my arm, its jaws clamping down. A searing pain shot through me, and I dropped the wrench. Just as the lead Overlord raised one of its massive arms, preparing to fire, a thought voice, cold and clear, flooded my mind. It wasn't the Overlord's usual command. It was different, a direct message, almost like a data download. It came from the implant, but it wasn't a command, it was information. The Overlord fired. A searing orange beam shot past me, striking Anya. She crumpled, a smoking hole in her chest. Her eyes, still wide and furious, stared blankly at the cavern ceiling. Alara, seeing Anya fall, screamed, a raw animal sound. She turned, a desperate, wild look on her face, and threw herself towards the power core, her small piece of metal held high. The lead Overlord turned its glowing orange slits towards Alara. Unit 412, insubordination. Termination protocol initiated. I saw the beam of energy erupt from its hand, heading straight for her. My own arm was throbbing, the creature still gnawing at it. The cavern was a blur of green eyes, orange light, and the metallic tang of fear. My mind, however, was strangely calm, filled with the chilling certainty of the information I had just received. We were not human. We were just another resource. And the true humans, the ones who looked so much like us, were coming. They were coming, and they would become the next agitated food supply. The beam struck Alara. She didn't even make a sound, just a flash of light, and then she was gone. The creatures, momentarily distracted by the Overlords, turned their attention back to me, their green eyes gleaming with renewed hunger. The lead Overlord began to move, its massive form casting a long shadow over me. The power core pulsed indifferent. The farm would continue. It always did. The beam that took Alara was quick, silent, just a flash, and then the space where she stood was empty. My arm still throbbed, the creature's teeth sinking deeper. Its green eyes, right up close, were like tiny, hungry emeralds. The lead Overlord, its huge form blocking out what little light remained, was advancing. Its thought voice a low, satisfied hum. Problem solved. A cold dread, deeper than any fear I'd known, settled over me. It wasn't just the pain or the creatures or the giant Overlord. It was the knowledge that had just been shoved into my brain, xylogen. Not human. We were just another crop, another resource. The colony world was a lie. Everything was a lie. The creature on my arm ripped, and I screamed, a raw animal sound that was lost in the chittering chorus. I kicked, trying to dislodge it, but another one leaped onto my back, its claws digging into my shoulders. The cavern was a swirling nightmare of green eyes and snapping jaws. The Overlord reached me. Its massive, granite-like hand, surprisingly gentle, closed around my head. The thought voice, now directly in my mind, was calm, almost bored. Unit 734. Processing initiated. Data extraction complete. I felt a jolt, a cold, sharp sensation that wasn't pain but something far worse. It was like my very thoughts, my memories, my identity were being pulled from my skull, sucked away. I saw flashes, Alara's defiant eyes, Jax throwing himself at the Overlord, Anya's desperate plea, all of it being harvested. For what? Information? Or just to make me empty, easier to process? The creatures were still on me, but their bites felt distant, dull. My vision blurred. The Overlord grip tightened, not crushing but firm, inescapable. I was just a unit, a number, a temporary part of their system. The world went dark, not a sudden blackout, but a slow creeping fade like a dying light. The chittering of the creatures, the hum of the power core, the cold, indifferent thought voice of the Overlord, all of it receded, becoming nothing more than a faint echo. The farm would continue its work. The cycle would turn, and the new arrivals would soon learn their place in it. There was no escape, there was only the processing.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share.